Testing 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2.
Got it.
Mic on. Just click that when you see the yellow light, you can talk.
It's 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the January 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. We'll go ahead and go through roll call. Commissioner Varnell,
Here.
Commissioner Littlefield,
Present.
Commissioner Russell,
Here.
Commissioner Hale is not available, Commissioner Schuline,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner George is not available, and Commissioner Cornett.
Here.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to have a motion from the traffic commissioners concerning the minutes of the November meeting.
Motion to approve.
Well, we're gonna,
We're doing this on this.
yeah, we're gonna have it come up here in just a second. There we go. We have a motion from Commissioner Varnell to approve, seconded by Commissioner Russell. Any talk on this item? Okay, we have the motion to approve from Commissioner Varnell, seconded by Commissioner Russell. Here's our voting buttons. Go ahead and vote. Okay. We're just waiting on a status.
Go ahead, Yay. I wasn't here for that
Yeah,
meeting.
it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay, the item passed. And then are we moving out of this screen? There it is, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item 3, the report on licensed taxi and record service. Captain, do you have an input on this? Yeah.
I just refer them to the,
Yep, you're
is it on?
Mhm.
Okay. So I just refer them to the agenda.
on. The items that was going to be briefed are in the agenda items. Does anybody have any questions about it? Any comments? Okay, so we'll move on to the consent docket. Is there anybody here to speak against an item on the consent docket? Okay. Staff, do you have any input?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there may be some questions that we discussed before the meeting on item C. I do see that Mr. Johnson's in the audience and can respond. This is on the request for angle parking and a number of parking requests that are in the Northwest 39th Street area. You've got a staff report that's included. I might brief just first. This project is actually a Better Streets, Safer City project that is a City of Oklahoma City project. It's a project that's a street enhancement project on Northwest 39th. It's from Penn back to Young's. As a part of the project, it's a very similar project like a Project 180 project. A lot of the curb and gutter is coming out. It's had a number of district meetings. There's a lot of street enhancements, including street resurfacing. It's got intersection improvements. It's got new district lighting. It has a number of angle parking, and then you can see the lengthy list that is included there. There's 45-degree. There's reserved spaces for the physically disabled. There's 90-degree angle parking, and then there's a new parking feature that may be something we may want to discuss this afternoon, reverse angle parking. Included in the packet is some of the rendering information, some of the aerial information. There's even an example of the reverse angle in parking on page 18 of the report. But with that, this is for your consideration today. The plans have been completed. The project has been recommended by the Better Streets Advisory Board and also approved by the City Council, but today's action by the Commission is to consider all the parking changes and the new parking that's in the area.
So, Mr. Johnson, if you could come up and give your name, address, and go over, especially that reserve angle parking, because that's all new to us, sir.
Absolutely. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the city to discuss this Better Streets, Safer City project. I'm at 1 East Sheridan, Suite 200, Oklahoma City, 73104. So we have been the project engineer on this and have been working with the district for probably a little over a year. We began the project. The thought of this project was actually introduced, I think, before the Better Streets projects were approved. And this was on a list to be an enhancement to the district. And so once that extension of the MAPS money was approved, then this project was picked up, and we were fortunate to be selected. So we have had some really good down-to-earth meetings with the district on many occasions. One of the main conversations, and this was what brought up the reverse ankle parking, was that this is, as part of the Bike Walk OKC plan, this was to be a high-level tier biking area. And our original discussion with the community was we wanted to have protected bike lanes and do parallel parking, and the community didn't see that as a big enough need. They saw the parking as the bigger need. And so in working with the various bicycling groups around town, including several in my office that are bicycling enthusiasts, we felt that the reversed angle parking was the safest way to do sharrows when you have angle parking. And we've looked at our peer cities. We looked in Tulsa, looked in some other communities around the state, communities of our size, and came up with this concept, and you see it on this, the 1, 2, 3 method. And we are proposing as part of this project that signage to that effect be implemented as well. And this is a big copy of that. But this will be signage that you would see for the users of the parallel or the angle parking to see and use. City of Tulsa has had great success with this in their downtown area. So we feel like in this area, even though it's not downtown, we're as the picture shows at the bottom left, we are really, and the community really wants to engage pedestrian traffic and take some of their events to the sidewalks. And so we've got extra wide sidewalks. We have landscaping, as Mr. Winger said, a lot of lighting. We've put quite a bit of lighting in here to create a pedestrian safe area, because the parking in the area is all shared. We are working with the city staff currently in the city attorney's office to come up with an application to do a district-wide parking variance. And so we've been coordinating that with them as well. So this is one piece of a big puzzle. The business owners along 39th Street have supported this wholeheartedly, and it gets them additional spaces in the area that they've needed for quite some time. And with that, I think other than the fact that this shows a little bit better than what you see, and I apologize, it's small, but there's a lot of landscaping going in, a lot of islands going in, and we did design this at the request of Public Works to allow for, if the reversed angle parking is a complete failure, for them to come back and restripe it without having to rebuild islands. And so it's kind of a multi-design aspect. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions to clarify?
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thanks a lot, sir. Sir, do you have any more comment?
No further comments from staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Can I have a motion concerning the consent docket? I have a motion to approve.
Motion to
We have a
approve.
motion to
I was waiting for
approve.
it to
We're
come on
going
the
to
screen.
call it up here. There it comes. We want to go back to the old-fashioned way? Okay. Well, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Cornett. So now any talk on this item before we go to a vote? I just wanted to make sure that, Mr. Johnson was here to explain something new to us. This is something that I've never seen or even heard of. One of the concerns that I have is just, I'm driving down the road and I see the backup parking, and I see the sign and all that, but they're all taken. And I look over here to the left and there's a spot. And now I'm going to go ahead and cross yellow and pull in head first in. And then, of course, when I leave, I have to go across a lane of traffic, across yellow to get back into my lane to go. And that was something that just jumped out at me, that if I'm just driving and I see it, but that to me is the only negative, I think. And then once everybody gets used to the concept that somebody's going to go past the space and then come back, that's also, it's like parallel parking. You put your blinker on, you go past the space, and then you parallel park in. Same kind of concept. My only concern was that crossing the yellow, going head first into a parking space that's actually facing you. Any thoughts on that? Is that?
I had some similar concerns when I was first looking at this the other day, and I appreciate Mr. Johnson bringing the show and tell, because I didn't really understand how that was going to work, so I appreciate that. I haven't seen that in the 2 years I've been on this commission, so I appreciate that.
No,
Appreciate the bulletin boards to help explain it.
it's the first time for the city to go through this. And just so everybody knows, as you know, later on, we're going to be talking about angle parking. And if you notice, this is not in that package. And when I was talking to staff this week, the concept is to not put it into the angle parking right now and let it see after a year or two if we have problems, if people just can't operate that way. Then, like he said, we could very easily restripe it into regular pull-in. But I like the concept of that there'll be a lot of people, there'll be a lot of lights, there'll be some bike traffic on a share the road. As you pull out now, it's going to be so much easier to just look over your left shoulder and seeing the bikes come and seeing somebody who may be walking in the street or something, and then be able to pull out, which is a lot safer, of course, than backing out into traffic. So that's the positive for that area, I think, and that's the reason why they went with it.
And I would like to add the pedestrian friendliness. I mean, that is, reverse angle parking is definitely starting to show up in highly pedestrianized areas throughout the country. And I think another benefit is when you open your doors and are letting your kids out, they're walking toward the sidewalk and not coming out into the street, where I don't know how much 39th Street's going to attract families, but that is something to keep in mind just as we grow into reverse angle parking as an option moving forward.
Okay. Sir? Do you have? Okay. Yep, we're all ready. Okay, so any other talk on this item? And so for the consent docket, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Cornett, and now we can vote. Okay, it didn't show up, I don't think, the final results. And that was something too on the meeting minutes, it didn't show who all voted for what. There it is, okay.
I didn't touch it, it's showing me. Oh.
There we go. So the item passed and it showed it. Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we now go on to item 5. Let's see here. There we go, item 5. Okay, item 5, Eric J. Wegner, P.E., Director of Public Works, Civil Engineer, all wards, to consider a recommendation to the Oklahoma City Council on an ordinance relating to motor vehicles and traffic, amending Chapter 32 of the Oklahoma City Code 2020, amending Article 2, add administration and enforcement by amending Section 3293, disabled vehicles, amending Article 10X, yeah, 10, yeah. Standing and parking in general, and amending Section 32-314, parking close to curb, and amending Article 14, bicycles, by amending Section 32-484, motor vehicles in bicycle lanes. Well, let me ask, we'll have you go first, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am Eric Winger. I'm the Public Works Director for Oklahoma City, and I would normally have been on the podium maybe speaking to you, but I'll speak for you from the horseshoe today. We do have an item for your consideration today, and this really goes along with the continued conversation with Bike Walk OKC, expanding bike lane opportunities throughout Oklahoma City, and also the need to update the city ordinances to start reflecting how that also impacts parking. Right now, what we're proposing is there's an amendment to 3 different sections, as the chairman outlined. They're all in Chapter 32, and there is current requirements in city ordinance that vehicles parked along the edge of a roadway must have their tires within 18 inches of the curb. So that exists, and one of the things that's happening with bike lanes, and there's a new bike lane methodology called protected bike lanes, parking protected bike lanes, where the bike lane is actually between the curb and the parking. So as you see that on this drawing that's put up on the screen in front of you, you can see normally our bike lane is on the inside, it's on the traffic side. This bike lane would be protected next to that curb, but this would then cause those vehicles that are parking in those marked parking locations to be not in compliance with the city code. So what we're presenting to you today is a clarification to the code, some updates to the code in 3 areas. So the first section, 32-484, this is going to first prohibit vehicles from using a bike lane for turning, passing, or parking unless they're pulling up to the curb temporarily to load and unload a passenger or materials. The second one is 32-93. This is going to allow disabled vehicles, so a vehicle that must stop on a street that happens to have a marked bike lane, to also be able to park adjacent to that curb on top of the bike lane for up to 2 hours without being in violation of the ordinance. And then the last one, 32-314, this is where we actually give the relief to when there is marked parking and when there is a bicycle lane identified, like you see in the drawing above. This is going to allow those vehicles to park more than 18 inches from the curb, but they have to be within 18 inches of either the edge of that bike lane or, in this condition, the buffer line, which is that cross-hatched area that's adjacent to the bike lane, to be in compliance. So this is something that Planning and Public Works and Municipal Council has been working on for several months. We're finding that these are types of bike lanes that are going to be prescribed in Better Street, Safer City, Bike Walk OKC, probably as a part of projects going forward. And again, it just provides another tool for us to provide protected bicycling strategies throughout Oklahoma City. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have. With your consideration today, this obviously would be introduced to the City Council. It does take 3 meetings, 3 hearings of the council, an introduction, a public hearing, and a final for it to become a new ordinance. So this is the first step today at the Traffic Commission.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Is there anybody else wanting to speak on item 5A? All right. Can I have a motion concerning item 5A? Here we go.
Sorry.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Littlefield and seconded by Commissioner Varnell. Do we have any discussion up here on this item?
I'd just like to comment that I think it's an outstanding first step for protected bike lanes. Great work.
Thank you.
Hey, anybody else have comments from up here? Okay, so we're ready to move to our vote. It's moved by Littlefield, seconded by Varnell, and we're ready to vote. And the item has passed, and all seven. Okay, we're ready now to move to item 5B, Chris Kolsch. To consider a request for the addition of stop control on Northwest 38th Street at North Franklin Avenue to establish all-way stop control. Sir? Yep. So if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Absolutely. First of all, my name is Chris Kelch. I live at 2729 Northwest 38th Street. I'm retired from American Airlines. I bought a smaller home in the area. I'll talk real quick. My family was here before statehood. All I got is the best interest in Oklahoma City, always have. My great-grandfather built St. Anthony's Hospital in the basement with the mules. Anyway, I moved down on my home. I'd lived out in West Oklahoma City for 38 years. But I got over there and I noticed all the traffic was so bad. So I went and talked to the Baptist Center and I talked to Metro-Ford. And they were all in agreement with it that the traffic is so fast. We don't have that much traffic, but the traffic sometimes comes through that intersection at 100 miles an hour. And I'm kind of the grandfather of the whole neighborhood, I think, because they're all afraid to speak, but I'm not. And the new neighbors moved in with little kids, and one of the little kids was running out in the intersection, they caught him and everything, but I said, it's a disaster waiting to happen over there. My nephews are all on the police force, and everybody agrees, all the Kirbys and the Kelches on the force with you guys. It's a dangerous intersection. Part of it is the stop sign is too far back on the north side, and then when they pull up, the traffic is coming so fast in the morning, and it's just regular people like us. You know, you have the housewives, but they'll go through there 50, 60 miles an hour. And late at night, you have I wouldn't say gangsters, but the speeders, the teenagers are coming through there, and the police know. They know it's always been a problem intersection because I talked to them about it. All I'm asking, if we can please just change it from a two-way stop to a four-way stop, put a little more meat in the law over there and slow them down before somebody gets hurt. Metro-Ford's in total agreement with it. So's the Baptist Center. Metro-Ford, they test drive their cars and they come out, and old people, they don't know what they're doing. The young kids watch better, really. But they pull out and these guys are just zipping through there because they can't see. I even cut down my big tree in the front so we could see the intersection better for everybody. And I just please wish you guys would consider that. I do construction too. If it's such a thing, if you give me the signs, I'll install them, okay? But just please consider that. And I'm telling you, my best interest is for Oklahoma City. I just want to see us grow. I think everybody's doing a great job. All you guys, I really appreciate you coming in. I know the COVID's got everybody scared. I went and got my shot yesterday. I lost my brother 6 weeks ago. He was going to be here with me today. But he didn't make it. He's out at 29th and by the airport in the cemetery. But please consider that, and I'll quit talking. And any questions on anything, let me know, and I'll try to answer them for you.
All right, sir, thank you very much. And also sorry for your loss.
Really a sad situation.
Okay, anybody else wanted to speak on item 5B? Okay, staff, can we have some input, please?
Absolutely. The staff did complete a review of the intersection, and the details are included in your staff report. When we look at the summary of the recommendation, staff's findings are that there was not a mitigating circumstance, at least from an MUTCD standpoint, to merit the request for this stop control. Restricted decision and sight distance or any unusual collision history was not found at this location. But with the applicant's request, I mean, there is a request to install the stop control to potentially reduce speed in the area. But with that, the action is at the discretion of this committee and commission as to how to move forward.
Thank you very much, sir. Do we have a motion for item 5B? I'm off, thank you. It's like a Zoom meeting, sorry. All right, so let me start that over again. Thank you, staff. Do we have a motion for item 5B? And we need to know if it's an approve or disapprove. Do we, no, here we go. Well. Right, for right now it's approved, and we'll see if anybody comes up and gives a recommendation to approve. And if nobody does, then we'll just switch it over. Oh, here we go. Now we have it. There we go. Okay, so we do have a motion to approve by Commissioner Littlefield, and it's seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Now we can talk up here. Anybody have input?
I do.
Okay.
I always appreciate it when somebody comes and they've talked to their neighbors. I always give a lot of credit to those people that'll go out and do the research and ask the neighbors around what else they want. And thank you for doing that. That's why you're going to get my support.
Okay. Anybody else wanted to talk on this item?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's rarely a day goes by that I do not travel right through there. I'm a design build carpenter. I trade at Lowe's. There's Mayfair Lock, great places along there. And that is a really cool little escape hatch for people coming out of Lowe's through there. And although I see this is not in a neighborhood, and I see this is not in the middle of a commercial district, it's on the boundary of one. I can't see where there would be any kind of traffic calming measure that could be applied here. And I'm totally support finishing this off. In addition, it finishes off a consistency on that street as you go eastbound. And it would give the expectation to a driver that there would be a stop sign there. So I'm very much in favor of approval of this.
Sarah, you also mentioned that one of the stop signs sits too far back. Is that correct? Is there any way that the city could make sure that that's in accordance with that intersection, just that it should be like aligned with sightlines?
If I may speak on that, because I'm in construction too, I don't know if the city can do it or not, I would take the stop sign, apply it to the OG&E metal pole up there. That will bring it up about 6 or 8 feet, and that would really help the situation. And I forgot something very important. It's not the amount of traffic that we have in the street, okay? But the traffic we do have from time to time is horrendously fast. I mean, they're 60, 80, 100 miles an hour. If I had a clocker, I could clock it and show you. It's scary how fast they come through there. And they just sometimes they blatantly run it from the other direction. And I don't know why. I just don't know how to fix it. But I think if we put a bigger stop sign up when you're headed south and we attach it to the side of that big steel pole, that would help. And then we put the stop signs on the other side and maybe even a stop ahead sign down the street. All the neighbors want it. All the businesses want it. You know, I'm a businessman. I'm a sky cap for American Airlines retired. I know. I want everything. If you ever flew American Airlines, you probably know me because I boarded you on the plane. I'm the outside guy for a long time. That's me. That's me. With no beard and short hair. That's me. I grew this out because of COVID, okay? Just see what I look like.
All right, thank you very much.
Anyway,
sir.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner, we'd be happy to follow up on that and
That'd be
check the
great.
intersection that it's in compliance, so we'll do
Thank
that.
you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask the question. When was the parking removed? When was the parking? It says no parking on this street and on 38th and the other street. So
You know, I talked to the
Oh, hold up, sir.
there's
Sir,
no
you come up to the
reason-
microphone, thank you.
So that contributes to the speeding, and then my other question would be, how many tickets have been written for speeding on that street, if any?
When I talked to the boys at the airport, they said that's always been a hotbed for tickets forever over there, because they're all my friends out there. But I don't know, I don't know if Metro Ford had anything to do with it. They're really nice. They've been very nice to me, and so's the Baptist Center. They've been very, very nice, so I'm not saying nothing about anybody. But that parking on the Metro Ford side, that needs to scoot up, and another sign needs to be put about 25 feet would help a whole lot, because you can't see. The fire trucks have a heck of a time getting around the corner. And when they have those big vehicles, they can't make the bend. If we have an emergency at 39th and May, honestly, I don't know how they're going to get there unless they go down the next block and cut across, because they can't make that bend from certain times. That would really help. Take about 25 feet off, put another sign there from the end, and put the new stop signs up, and I'm good to go forever, I think. So, any other questions?
All right, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller, that, I don't know exactly how wide that street is. I'm sure it's probably in the data here. But the Metro Ford folks park all the way along the north side of that street, from May Avenue all the way to this intersection in question. They're often large vehicles too. And it makes that road very narrow when cars are parked just on that side of the street. I have seen vehicles parked in the no parking anytime zone on the south side of the street, and it really makes it impassable for two vehicles to pass each other. So the revoking the no parking anytime area on the south side of the street would be very problematic.
If I may comment just briefly, inside the report on this particular item, it gives you some photos of the streets on pages 16 and 17. You'll see the stop signs that are in question there. On page 17, you'll see some of the parking that Commissioner Littlefield mentioned as well. And as I mentioned, we'll check the stop signs at that location. I know the pole that is in question that it possibly could be mounted to, that's an OG&E pole, so the city will not be able to mount the stop sign to that fixture as it's not owned by Oklahoma City. But we'll check the stop signs in the area, and if we need to follow up on any of the other reports, we can do that as well, Commissioner, and get that information back to you.
I did have all the pictures. I couldn't get them to print as well. I'm sorry.
All right, any other talk from up here on the? Okay, so you can, I was going to mention something there, but that's fine. Okay, so no more talk on item 5B. We have our motions here. It was moved to approve from Commissioner Littlefield and seconded by Commissioner Schuline, and we're ready to vote now. I don't see the votes. Do you guys see the votes? Hit computer. Oh, I pushed that off. Yep, I'm the bad guy. There we go. Sorry. Oh, it went from presentation to computer. All right. I try. Okay, the item has passed, and we're ready now to move on to item 5C. Matthew Fair, Senior Project Manager, Tag Team LLC, to consider a request to establish a no parking anytime restriction on the west side of West Woodward Avenue from Southwest 44th Street to approximately 450 feet south of the south curb line of Southwest 44th Street. And we have Jarrett Turner, I believe. Yes, sir. So if you come up to the mic, if I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Name is Jarrett Turner, standing in for Matthew Fair. Address 3400 Southwest Street, 40. Sorry, I'm new to the area. Address is 3400 Southwest Street and 44th Street. So we're here asking for no parking on Woodward Avenue from 44th Street down to about 46th Street, as you can see. So, and we've talked to the residents in those marked houses, and they all signed a petition. They all agree that this is something that they would like to see. And at Woodward Place Apartments, formerly known as Southern Oaks, we've been putting in a lot of work to make this part of the community a lot safer and more family-oriented. And the following reasons are why we would like to see no parking in that region. It is already a narrow street, but when we have cars parking on both sides of the street, it becomes exponentially narrower. And we have trouble with emergency vehicles, ambulances, fire trucks, etc., making their way through the street to respond to calls. We also, as you can see, on both sides of Woodward Avenue, our complex is split. So we have residents who have family, they have friends on both sides of the street who travel back and forth often. In the last month or so, staff of the property themselves have seen 4 or 5 children almost being hit by vehicles coming through because the pedestrian's vision is obstructed by the number of cars on both sides of the street. And we've also seen terrible traffic blocked up as people are trying to get onto 44th Street, get off of 44th Street, especially with the airport nearby. Last night, in fact, as I was leaving work, I saw a major wreck. I've got a photo on my phone. I don't know if you want to see that, but it was a bad wreck. There were probably 4 or 5 cars right there at that intersection alone, parked pretty close to it as well. And we've also seen a number of illicit transactions of various sorts as cars have been feeling free to park along that curb there. And we've already seen a decrease as we've been here monitoring it more, but we would like to see that no parking on both curbs in that section. Do you have any questions for me?
All right, thank you very much, sir. Staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff did review the application, and we also received a petition that meets the Commission's requirements for making sure that others in the area are aware of the request. The street is narrow. It's only 26 feet wide. As you'll see on the image, there's already a no parking restriction in place on the east side. So this approval today would mirror that and apply it also to the west side. And staff is in agreement, and approvals at the discretion of the Commission.
All right, thank you, staff. We have a motion concerning 5C. I'll call that up here. Okay, we have a motion to approve 5C from Commissioner Russell and seconded by Commissioner Miller. Do you have any talk on this item?
I would just also mention, I know in the letter, Mr. Fair mentioned that cars are still parking on the east side, that is already no parking, and maybe make known to your residents and the people that live there the different methods to ask Oklahoma City Police to increase patrols possibly through the OKC Connect app, through the Action Center, or through calls to the South, like I said, be the South District, wouldn't it?
That's
Southwest.
correct. Be southwest.
Yeah.
But I agree with your recommendation for an actiongram. It's tracked. We have to do reports and then get that back to Beth as well.
So, sir, if you could come up, I just have a question. I understand you're on both sides of the road. You don't need to park vehicles on the road. You have enough in apartment parking?
Yeah, we have plenty of parking, and right now it's free as well, but yes, we have plenty of parking on our premises.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Okay.
I'm going to be a broken record. You guys have heard me say this many times, but removing on-street parking kind of goes against what you had noted about children running out into the street and almost getting hit. Providing that buffer actually slows traffic down, so you're going to run into the same issue that Mr. Kolsch just tried to solve by putting in a stop sign, is that it's going to create a wider street that is more of a speed zone because there's no, I guess, buffer is kind of what you would call that. So that's one of the, I mean, you all have heard me say that every single time this issue has come up. There's not a stop sign on either end. Or I guess there is a stop sign on 44th Street, but there's not on 46th. So anybody coming off of 4th Street will have free reign to speed through that in between those two, which I think will exacerbate your problem.
Which also brings up a good point that if you do see now you have speeder problems instead of parking problems and all those kind of things, this could be a good spot for some sort of traffic control measures, traffic calming measures, halfway through, a little speed bump or something like that, a speed hump, that in the future, if that turns into some problem, we are looking for some possibility for some spots that might want to, and seeing as you kind of, I wouldn't say own the road, but you're on both sides of the road, that may be something that you would want. So, very good point, ma'am. Okay, any other talk on item 5C? Okay, ma'am, we're ready to vote. That one got off a little quick, I think, didn't it? Did we see it? Yeah, we didn't see that one up on the board. Yes, it was up there. Okay, so it was up there, everybody voted for it. Okay, we're ready now to move to item. Say again? Oh, we had one negative. So we probably want to see it up on the board. Well, we need to move. Who was it that? There we go. There it is. All right. There we go. Okay. So the item did pass. Thank you. Okay, now we're ready to move on to item 5D. Alex Catlovenko, Shay Enterprises, doing business as European Store, to consider request to establish one 60-degree angle parking within a proposed setback area on the east side of North Brookline Avenue from approximately 30 feet south to 97 feet south of the south curb line of Northwest 23rd Street, and 2, a reserved parking space for the physically disabled within a proposed setback area on the east side of North Brooklyn Avenue from approximately 30 feet south to 57 feet south of the south curb line of Northwest 23rd Street. And sir, if you could come on up, your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Alex Kotlavenko, I'm the owner of the European Store, Oklahoma. We are currently located at 3604 North May Avenue in a strip mall center. We purchased this building on 2936 Northwest 23rd Street about a year ago in January as potential future home for this little grocery store that we have. This area is generally, I think, challenged for any kind of parking, and I think that really constrains some of the businesses in that area. The building that we purchased really does not have any parking whatsoever. So there's really no way that patrons can park anywhere. So we are proposing to put angled parking in that along the Brookline Avenue. I think something that's relevant that there is, first of all, there's already cleared area for parking just down the street towards the 22nd Street, if you can see on that picture. And there's also no parking zone on the west side of the Brookline Avenue. So that's just, we're proposing to put some angled parking there to allow our patrons to access the store potentially at a later date. So, any
All right,
questions?
No, perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody else to speak on this item? So staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff did review the application. The review of the application, there is adequate space that's available that's on that property that you saw that was on the screen image. So it meets all of the existing standards for setbacks and for distance. It doesn't encroach into any of the lanes. So at this time, we do make the note that if approved, the applicant is going to be responsible for the preparation of all the public improvements associated with the parking. So that's going to include any utility relocations or anything that's required of the parking to be placed. It's not something that the city cost would cover. So, but with that, it meets all of the standards and details, and action is at the discretion of the commission.
Okay, so sir, if you could come up, let me just make sure that you're okay with that comment, that you would pay for all the work to be done?
Yes,
So-
we are aware of a utility post, and we have not really priced any work to do so, but we would like to at least have an option of doing so at a later date.
Okay.
So we're definitely aware that we're going to bear the cost.
Okay,
So thank you.
very good, sir, thank you. Okay, do we have a motion to approve, subject to staff recommendation? We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Cornett and seconded by Commissioner Russell. Do we have any talk on this item? Yes, sir.
I have some questions on what the city would require as far as materials of that parking area. I just don't want to make sure and approve something and then drive up a year later and it's rock or something like that. So does the city require them to be concrete or asphalt, or where would the city require them to get this done?
The request for the parking today would just be to allow the parking to occur. So as he mentioned, if he chooses to advance that, there would be a plan, as anything constructed in the right-of-way has to come to the city engineer's office for review and approval. We'd review to make sure that it meets the current requirements for parking. In most cases, it's going to have to be a hard surface parking like asphalt or concrete. It's going to have potentially some signage and things added to it, but we would look at that at the time that they're ready to make an actual application. And it would be very similar, I think, to what the details were shown on the image on the screen, or that are included also in the packet.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any other talk on this item? Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Cornett, seconded by Commissioner Russell, to approve. So we're ready to vote. And here we go. An item has passed. Okay. Thank you very much, sir. And now we're up to item 5E, Stuart Chai, PE, City Traffic Engineer, to consider the development of minimum standards for on-street angle and parallel parking. Stuart's not available to be with us, but we got the boss here. So there's nobody out there to talk, so it's all yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was an item that Stuart was well prepared to present to you today, and obviously I'll do my best in his absence. And so introducing this item, I'm just going to go through just a brief history that's included in the first page of the packet. In 1949, there was a citizens angled parking policy that was established by the city of Oklahoma City that helped guide on-street parking standards. But since 1949, those standards and those policies have all been since repealed And there's really only two sections of the municipal code that still apply to on-street parking. The first is Ordinance 6186. It's actually Municipal Code Section 32303. It provides for a 5-foot sidewalk to be provided as a minimum width sidewalk maintained adjacent to a setback parking space. The only other section that applies is in Chapter 59. It's what you see in most of your staff reports and as a part of your packets as to when we do receive parking. It really is more made for private development off-street parking, but the standards and the geometries are such that we do utilize those for the on-street. So our presentation today is to reintroduce the staff's willingness with the commission's support to go forward and actually recreate and restudy and to bring back to this commission formal on-street, both parallel and angle parking standards to move us forward. There's a lot of information that's included in the packet. You're going to see some of the excerpts to Chapter 59. Again, those are the ones that you see on page 2 that are the standards that we're currently utilizing as the basis for recommendations today. You're going to see a lot of the historical information on pages 3 and 4 with that original parking standard and how it was originally thought through. You also find some of the current practices that we're currently following. There's a lot of new development. There's a lot of applications like you've seen today for new on-street parking, either parts of streetscapes or just parts of private development. You're going to see that we are starting to have to review, is there adequate lane width? Is the speed correct to add parking to an on-street situation? We're looking at maneuvering distances. We're looking at depth of stall, width of stall, head in, reverse angled in. All those different factors are just things that we'd like to move forward with your consideration. So asking today of the Commission's support to move forward. There's no action today to actually approve any standards, but we did want to provide you with a lot of the research and the information that's already been done to date, so we would begin formalizing that with your support. Processes after that would be to bring that back for the Commission's approval, and then it would be, with your approval, introduced to the City Council and new ordinances or modifications to existing ordinances adopted. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So, Counselor, do we need a motion and approval and all that, even though it's not an action item per se? So there's nothing to vote on with this or prior to? Okay, good. So before we move on with the motion, why don't we go ahead and talk, and then we can see if there's something that we want to move on with. Anybody want to go first? Anybody have any input?
I have, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, I have a couple of questions. Very important step here, and coming from a background with the highway department and dealing with parking issues in small towns and state highways, the issue there was, and it was spelled out in the commission policy, Transportation Commission policy, as well as the title, that parking is brought up, but the deparking could not interfere with free flow traffic. That is the difference, and Stewart has recognized that because he's put the word "and" adjacent lane. That'll be something against Title 47, but it's probably necessary because it's a municipality. But there was, when we had to make that determination with our legal staff, we could not allow parking that backed into a through lane on the state highway, and that was in Title 47. I don't see any mention of Title 47 in any of this recommendations yet, and I know there's going to be some because, or should be, because it's dealt with in Title 47 as far as parking. It does give the municipalities the power to do it in 4711.1004C, but I don't know what, and there's going to be some federal aid roads through the city and the state highways, and that, I was wondering if that's going to be a separate issue. I want to ask the legal counsel about how that would be interpreted.
Sorry, I had to get my mic on. So the question about Title 47 and its applicability to this process is what you're asking? So it would be, we can review it, but a lot of that could also be regarding state highway specifically or state. So there is this, like you mentioned, delegation to municipalities for creation of their own procedures and processes and management of their roadways.
And with that, I'm sure there'll be a recognizing different arterials and local and collector streets that's already been mentioned. We got to think about that because nothing affects road user more than, or level of service of a facility than parking and traffic control devices like signals and things like that and speed limit. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you very much for that input, sir. Anybody else have some input for the staff?
Can you go into a little bit more detail about the non-addressing of reverse angle parking specific to this plan right now and kind of when that will be addressed, or if it's just a wait and see game? Like, I don't want us to not put something in here and then in 3 years, whenever it becomes successful and we actually want to use it, and then all of a sudden it's not even in this plan for us to approve. I don't want it to come back and bite us.
No, I think our goal is to just address and at least get standards developed that we can get out to our consultants so that they know what all parking opportunities are available in Oklahoma City. So, right now they're meeting with staff one-on-one, and we're really looking at each plan individually just to see how it fits that particular street. So many streets are so different widths, different number of lanes, different speeds, as we mentioned. We'd really want to get to that point where we can at least standardize to a level so that we're giving them some good guidance. But then I think we can get into some of those specialty parking opportunities, no different than, say, the parking separated bike lane, reverse angle parking. So the parking project on Northwest 39th will be the first pilot project of the reverse angle parking for Oklahoma City. I think we'll try to keep the plan as flexible as we can to incorporate those as they come up. And any newer, I don't want to call it a technology, but just a newer layout of parking that the Oklahoma City may want to consider in the future as well. We may have to amend the ordinances from time to time. It's obviously been a while since they've been amended, and we've not been working from one that's specific to right-of-way on-street parking. But I think this is a good first step, so we'll definitely keep all the options as open as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else have some comments, recommendations? Anybody want to recommend to not do this? No, I don't think so.
I have one other question.
Yes, sir.
And Dirt and I's had this conversation, but why did they leave out 30-degree angle parking? That was the one issue when I dealt with the town that nobody could like parallel parking. So the next thing was a 30-degree. That's as closest to come that you can back out and not interfere and go. But and maybe the demand for parking in the city is a lot more than you would think on some of the others. But I checked on other states, and most of them include 30-degree angle parking.
Yeah, so Stuart and I visited about it quite a bit too, and I'll just kind of give a general premise. So, I mean, I think everybody's very familiar with 90 degrees. And then moving back to 75, 60, 45. We've got a lot of 45-degree parking, but as you start approaching those lesser angles like 30-degree, you're almost parallel. So at that point, it's almost just, you're not gaining. So the more spaces that are closer to 90 degrees, you get more spaces on that block if space is available. You get fewer spaces if you're completely parallel, but 30 is so close to parallel, it may just be one of those considerations that if we're at that shallow of an angle, we're better just being parallel overall.
Well, the difference was in which one's the easiest to park.
Sure.
And we sold the 30-degree a lot quicker than we sold it parallel, just for that fact. Plus, you could open a door and you never hit the vehicle beside you. I mean, it was a big hit in the small town. And it's just the convenience of laying it out for them and letting them see it. And once they saw it, oh, yeah, we'll take that.
But that's a good comment. So let us take that in consideration too. And as we bring that plan back to you for consideration, we can hopefully have some additional input and some guidance and recommendations for you as well.
There we go. All right, anybody have any more comments? And so, Counselor, we do have to have a motion and second and vote? No, we don't have to do anything on this one?
There's nothing being recommended at this time, it's just the concept. So if you'd like to approve staff to move forward, you could, but there's no plan or anything in front of you.
Is anybody against the staff doing this? All right.
Thank you. We'll move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. So there is no motion and no voting on this item. So we'll go ahead and go to item 6, comments from citizens. Nobody's here. Reports from other commissioners, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll start with Commissioner Varnell.
Staff for today. I love being back in person. Thank you.
Okay, over to Commissioner Littlefield.
Since I didn't say anything last month, I'm going to make up for it this month.
We all felt cheated.
I was in a weird mood. I just didn't feel like it was necessary for me to add anything. I have got 3 things that I want to touch on real briefly. If I can get this clip back on, it will help on it. I came across an article last week that I read that I can't remember the source, but I saved it, and I'll see if I can send it to Stuart where he can send it out to you guys. It was about the pandemic's effect on public parking garages, private parking garages, and on-street parking, and the vehicle for hire industry. And it was really a fascinating read that, I think all of us may have thought about this a year or 6 months ago. These huge downtown corporations and a humongous base of their employees are working at home, and they're not going downtown, they're not parking. And it was an interesting article from the perspective that it discussed that this isn't going to probably be a temporary thing. It's probably going to be a trend for the future of how public parking garages and parking is utilized. And I just thought it was an interesting thing to note, as we sit here and we do our processes with these applications. I think over time things might change in a dramatic way for the better. So that was one comment. I'm done with that one. Okay, the second comment that I want to make is, and I didn't feel the necessity to bring it up when the item was before us, about the back-end parking. I was very much involved and kept in the loop and attended some meetings on the 39th Street District work. And when they came up with that idea, I was like, oh, no way. There's no way that I can back a car into a parking space and not run over somebody or the picnic table or something like that. But then I started thinking about it, and a much more severe activity that I make is backing out of a parking space. So it really made a lot of sense to me, and I'm really excited about this trial, and I think it's going to work. And the other thing that's interesting about that district is it's a family district, and more or less most of the people that are going to be patronize that district are going to be regular folks, and they will very quickly get used to how that process works. The other thing that was really fascinating to me about it was how hard city staff had to work to figure out how to accommodate all the elements that they wanted to do. And a bike lane, a share was very, very important to them. So when I look at it from the traffic calming point of view and from the pro-pedestrian, less accommodating for the vehicles, it really made sense. And I'm excited about seeing that happening in our ward and city. And the third thing that I want to comment on, which is just a story, it's not intended to have any kind of impact on traffic calming, but we're all aware of the Center Islands on Western Avenue in the business district there. And it just seemed like every time the yield side went up, it came down every time. And the new adopted plan is that those are gone, and they are now gone, and that on both ends, the north and the south ends of the district, we're erecting controlled crosswalk signage, which is off the street, out of the island. And they just got them up. They're not completely operational because the signage isn't on them yet, but one of them got completely wiped out. And Eric, to make sure I knew what I was talking about the other day, I came that way down here today, and it's just a tangled mess, and most of the car parts are still there with it. And isn't that just sad that what are we going to do to get people to understand that these business improvement districts are more part of a neighborhood than anything else, and get people to slow down, stay sober, not drink inebriated, and respect these areas. So that's just my comment. That saddened me. Once all the signage is up and the crosswalk painting is completed, maybe that'll make the difference that we're looking for. But you got some work to do on one of them. That's all from me.
All right, thank you very much.
I promise to be quiet next month.
Well, maybe just one item. Go over to Commissioner Russell.
One thing I did notice, we approved on Northwest 10th Street months ago a controlled crosswalk lighted sign. I've noticed that that is actually coming into fruition at this point. The grocery store across the street has since closed after it had just opened, which is sad, but hopefully maybe something with all the development there, another person could take that place. But it'll be interesting to see how that works, and notice that is about near completion. Besides that, that's all I got.
Okay, then we go on over to Commissioner Schuline.
Nothing to add, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Not really. I got my COVID shot this morning. So, good. Hope everything turns out good. The only comment I would have is driving around, I know when traffic signals are put in and they're timed, maybe for a certain traffic pattern at the time, but over time, times change, and particularly up in the northern where the development's moved on, but some of these traffic signals that I see are still timed for when they were first put in, and there wasn't as much traffic on maybe the side roads or the left turns, or maybe they got leading left turns or lagging, whatever, but it just seems, I get a lot of questions about, what's wrong with the light? How come it won't let us go? There's nobody going. And that's in the north part of Oklahoma City, as far as I know, and I just want to make that. I'll get with Stuart about it. He and I don't know. I want to know what kind of timing patterns they have and how often they change, because it could be tied into something else. But these are not, obviously. They're half a mile apart. And it's just different timing pattern, offsets and things like that that I need him to explain to me.
No, and if you see some things in the community that just don't seem right, we would ask, and whether you advise a resident to do the same. And we've got the city's action center that we do receive those types of requests frequently, and we can go out and check. Sometimes it's really not the timing that's off. We find that there's a detector loop that's broken, or we find that there's a malfunction with maybe a component that we need to replace. But it's typically a detector that we find that's broken, and it's holding cars in the wrong direction. It's running on what we call recall. It's just running on time. It doesn't know that cars are there. So, but please call those in, and we'll check those out, and staff would be happy to assist.
Very good. Anything else, sir? Okay, over to Commissioner Cornett.
I was going to mention the Action Center on the app. Timing issues for traffic lights is one of the options that you can select, and it'll place you exactly where you are, because I've used it before. I love the Action Center. There were two things that I wanted to bring up. The northbound on Broadway, we asked a few months ago to put in some signage around that Winans Park. And that's, since the signage has gone in, I haven't seen a single person plow over the light pole there. So that was a really good opportunity for us to kind of solve that problem, and hopefully save the city some frustration from having to continually do that. And then another really exciting thing for pedestrian friendliness is on 23rd Street and Walker. There's now a leading pedestrian interval, which I'm not sure if you all are familiar with it. What it is if somebody pushes the walk button to cross across 23rd Street at Walker, then it will pause all traffic for 4 seconds, meaning that whenever the light turns red, then you can't, you don't get the green light immediately. It pauses everything for 4 seconds, allowing the pedestrian to enter into the intersection before traffic is allowed to run them over, essentially, to turn into them. So that is active at that intersection. I would absolutely love for us to look at other opportunities to use that throughout the city. I think any of our central business district areas, I think Breaktown is probably primed for it at this point. But just being able to move that forward in the city would be a really big advancement, I think, for pedestrianness. Pedestrianness? I don't know if that's a word. It is today.
It is now. All right. Anything else from the traffic commissioners? Captain, do you have anything?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Counselor?
Just thank you to Francis Kersey for all of her help in keeping us on track today.
Thank you. All right, staff?
We just have one report in your packet today. It's the report, the new yield and parking restriction installations that were administratively approved. You'll find those in your packet, and the list of those is on page 2. So, but thank you too.
Okay. Do we have any other business for the Traffic Commission today? All right, we stand adjourned.